What is up, my super friends? SuperFlex Super Friends on this super sexy Super Friday night. Back for round two. And want to man, already got sevens in the house. Matt Williams. He got tired of baseball, I think. Realized football's where it's at. Getting back into the fantasy football world here. And it's good to have him back. One of my good friends I got to meet in Cleveland. Thank you for joining, Sevens. Thank you all for joining. And I'm sure we've got some more trickling in. I got the hot sauce. Dynasty Hot Sauce podcast. I imagine that's Larry Monkey. Could be Justin, but usually that's Larry Monkey running that one. And the Captain Redbeard, AJ Gardner, should be behind the glass. I don't know who gave him the day off, but it's all good though. This is a nice and easy format here. We had a lot of fun last week, and get to go for round two here tonight. So yeah, make sure to bring those questions. Plenty to talk about in the meantime. We've got new ADP coming up at DLF. Hasn't been posted yet, and I'm not totally sure why that is, but it's all good either way, because I can tell you exactly how it's looking when we get to that point. But again, I just want to, the entire point of this, and I talked about this last night on this very channel. I got to do the team series on the Denver Broncos, my beloved Denver Broncos, and their absolutely horrific decisions at the quarterback position, which offends me greatly as, quarterback guy, SuperFlexDude. But I got to jump on with Cal Shoemake, and Nate Polvote, Lindellians. we had to talk Broncos together. And I was saying, SuperFlex Super Show, still my baby. I still love doing that one. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a strange off season for that one, and without any co-hosts. And so getting the opportunity to just get on here and talk with all of you, get to strategize, get to talk player values, things like that. All things Superflex. Actually, we talked some one quarterback last week too. Let's be fair. We talked dynasty, we talked redraft. We're all over the place. So, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting to do more of that. This is how I like to decompress from a long, hard week of work. So, thank you to all of you for joining. Thank you for your questions. Let's get down to it. Sevens asks, 15 men in the box for Kamara. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why not. There's nothing else to stop there. Doesn't this pretty much just solidify the job for Taysom Hill? It sucks, because I was pretty convinced. Never been a fan of Jameis Winston. I really just dislike the decision making in Tampa Bay. It just drove me nuts. But I mean, when you're talking about it, back to the Broncos and their quarterback dilemma, the Saints have a similar dilemma with those two guys. And I felt like, as much as I don't love it's really just kind of comes down to the decision making with Winston. You pretty much start every game, the first drive of every game is an interception, and then you're just kind of playing from behind the rest of the game. Great for fantasy purposes. But when you're trying to win games as an NFL franchise, absolutely ridiculously frustrating. But I mean, at least Jameis Winston's a quarterback, like Taysom Hill. It was just it was not pretty watching him play the quarterback position and what he did to all of the offensive weapons surrounding him. It was extremely frustrating last year. But I mean, for those who didn't hear, Michael Thomas just had ankle surgery in June. I'm not sure what the holdup was, but that's super late. And it's probably going to lead to him starting off the season on the physically unable to perform list, and he could miss a substantial amount of time. Nobody has been particularly clear on what that's going to look like, but it looks like he's going to miss some time for sure. So it feels to me like that is really kind of an argument for, Taysom Hill is your starting quarterback. So, he kind of covers up the blemishes in the receiving core, partly because he doesn't throw as much. And, partly because now you've got, this other dynamic to the offense that you have to try and defend. So yeah, it's starting to feel like the tide is kind of shifting back towards Taysom Hill. And again, I mean, it wasn't great for Alvin Kamara last year. And it does feel a little difficult to feel optimistic about Alvin Kamara with Taysom Hill at quarterback and without a particularly credible passing game otherwise. So yeah, unfortunate news. On top of the Cam Akers stuff, I mean, we lose Cam Akers for the season and possibly more. Those torn Achilles injuries have historically been absolutely terrible on running backs. It's kind of been a rough week here. And I mean, we're also hearing that Saquon Barkley might not be ready for the season. If he misses any time, it's a game or two. That one doesn't bother me nearly as much, but yeah, there you go. Back to New Orleans, back to Larry Monkey in the hot sauce pod. Troutman season, Adam Troutman. I mean, we already kind of had him pegged for a breakout. Now you don't have a whole lot else to guard against. So, or a whole lot of options to throw to, should I say? Adam Troutman looking that much better is the tight end one in that offense. Let's see. Captain Hill was used in multiple positions with Breeze and had success doing it. Why would Peyton want to take away that type of skill position threat? Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it was there last year too, though. That's the whole thing. That was an option. They could have turned it over to Jameis Winston then, and keep using Hill in those kind of gimmicky, different lining him up at different positions, using him in the passing game, use him in the running game, whatever you want. And I mean, they really just kind of went all in on him as a starting quarterback. And he did great for fantasy purposes. Taysom Hill himself as the starting quarterback, when he's on the field, Zedbout, you won some games with him at quarterback. He was awesome. It's what he does to the rest of those weapons that I think kind of concern people. Certainly concerns me. So, back to what AJ was saying there. That's what I would love to see. I'd love to see Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback, Taysom Hill, get him on the field more. You can even get him some snaps at quarterback. I don't know why you wouldn't just platoon those two guys. If you feel like, Jameis Winston is a guy who throws the ball down the field with accuracy, and Taysom Hill is a guy who, on the early downs can kind of get things going, move the chains, either with the arm or with the legs, and just kind of that versatility. why not? Why do we have to commit to one guy? I've never understood that. So, but we'll see. I think that if we're gonna see one guy, it's sounding like it's gonna be Taysom Hill based on this Michael Thomas news. I want to get to a question asked earlier today from SuperFlex Junkie, my guy Bobby Law. Said, John, I'm interested to hear what folks think about Trey Lance as a fantasy asset. So what do you guys think? How good do folks think he'll be, and how soon will his fantasy production start? Could he have the same kind of rookie season Watson had? How does Kyle Shanahan's offense change with Lance under center? So the interesting thing about that for me is, and we've got two offenses kind of going through the exact same type of dynamics with their quarterback battle, just kind of in reverse. You've got San Francisco starting off with Jimmy Garoppolo, pocket passer, not a whole lot of mobility, relatively good. I mean, he's a smart kind of the game manager type. And then you've got Trey Lance, who's going to be just ridiculously athletic. And, I personally have never thought a whole lot of him as a passer. When I watch these guys, I've seen it with guys like RG3. I've seen it with Lamar Jackson. I've seen it with, Tim Tebow. These guys who really kind of rely on the run, right? And then you watch them stand in a pocket and throw, and you can tell that was a very coached, those are very coached, manufactured passing mechanics, and it always makes me feel like I wonder what's going through that guy's mind. It's not just, making the read and figuring out, where do I need to put this ball? How much velocity, how much touch? It's not that. It's like, okay, what did coach tell me about, where, about hand placement on the ball and the arm motion, where's my elbow need to be? Things like that. Like all of that stuff, you're just trying to cram into their head. And I don't know about you guys here in my 30s, teaching me something new is, it's not going to happen, whatever the things that I do them the way I do at this point. These guys are younger. I mean, we're talking about in their 20s, but still these are grown men that you didn't bother to teach them how to throw a football until they were 21, 22 years old. And now you're trying to teach them a whole new set of mechanics on throwing the ball. And I mean, it's just, you're honestly, you're just kind of getting in the way of what they're able to do by trying to teach them something that they, trying to reprogram them, essentially teach them something completely different and get them doing something completely different. But I see that with Trey Lance. That's kind of the concern for me. Now, I think that he's going to be extremely effective off of his athleticism, off of the ability to run, sets up the pass. I think that he's going to be just fine. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks like that have plenty of success. I think he's a better passer than Lamar Jackson, if I'm being honest. So, and Lamar Jackson has been extremely successful in this league. There's no reason to believe that Trey Lance won't. But yeah, I mean, how much are you going to try and rein him in and get him to stand in the pocket and, use that motion that you tried to coach into him in college? That's the more of that we have to see, the less hope I'm going to have for sustainable production. So with all that said, I mean, kind of back to, the dilemma they've got the polished passer, with, not a whole lot of athleticism, not a whole lot of, not a whole lot of, man, what's the right way to say this? Just kind of the courage to, to make a play, throw the ball down the field. There's not a whole lot of that going on. SuperFlex, dude. Yeah, got to get that in there. Thanks to mayonnaise Hayes. Yeah, there's not a lot of that with Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Lance that's all he is. He's has all the confidence in the world in his athleticism and his ability to throw the ball down the field, to take off and run when he needs to. He's going to look to take off and run more often than not, in all honesty. It's not that one is necessarily better than the other. I mean, unofficially, off the record, give me the pocket passer personally, because I do think it's more sustainable. But we talk all the time about the Konami code, and that's kind of what Trey Lance gives you. But the bottom line is, regardless of where you stand on, which type of quarterback do you want leading your franchise, regardless of that, what we do know is they're going to be two totally different offenses. How do you transition from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance? It's really hard to do. I don't know that that's necessarily something that you want to endeavor if you're San Francisco. To me, you just make the move to Trey Lance right out. Get everybody used to the fact that now you've got this mobile quarterback. You've got a guy who can throw the ball down the field. You've got a strong arm guy, and he's going to take some shots. He's going to throw the ball down the field. He's not going to be afraid to do it. They haven't had that in several years now with Jimmy Garoppolo there. So, now's the time. Don't get them back to, don't bring them back to, Jimmy Garoppolo's style of play. And then mid-season, now we make the move to Trey Lance and it's a totally different offense. Don't make your offensive players at the other positions learn a whole new offense, mid-season. Let's just make the move right up front. And I feel the exact same way in New England. As much as I love Cam Newton and always will, it makes absolutely no sense to start off with Cam Newton as your starting quarterback and then just change everything up in the middle of the season when you make the move to Mac Jones. Just do it. Just do it up front. Just pull off the Band-Aid. Mayonnaise has something else for us here. Made a trade in my DLF Cup 2 days ago. So it's SuperFlex. It's two PPR, 2 points per reception for tight ends. Massive tight end premium there. Taysom Hill, Will Fuller, Logan Thomas, and a 2022 third and a 2022 fourth for Robert Woods, James Conner. Taysom was my QB4 behind Rodgers, Ryan, Cousins. What says you? I mean, man, so Taysom, Hill over Robert Woods, and then you just kind of fall behind from there, unfortunately. I mean, I know that I know, Addison, that you're still a James Conner guy. But and I get it, but I mean, you're talking about Logan Thomas with that 2 point per reception tight end premium. You're talking about Taysom Hill and a SuperFlex. Those two guys alone just kind of, I mean, man, see if you can get that one overturned, dude. I don't know. Okay, here's the thing, guys. I get the quarterback depth piece of this. The feeling of having an extra quarterback that can be, can be trade bait, essentially, can be tradable. First of all, if you're going to trade a quarterback, it's regardless of what your depth chart looks like, we're really kind of talking basic economics. We want to find a price point that makes sense because, and I think I made this point last week too, I believe, but the first time you give up a quarterback for less than what they're worth in a super flex league, you really kind of set the price point. And so you're never going to get full value back in return again. And so, so definitely don't want to fall into that trap of, oh, I've got quarterbacks to spare, so I can afford to give one up at a discount. I don't think that that's what Addison was doing here. I don't think that he was thinking, that fourth quarterback is expendable. I'm just saying that I think that that's somebody, or that's something that people would, that's a trap that people fall into. And I just don't want to see that happen to my SuperFlex super friends. So the price of a quarterback stays the same regardless of what your depth chart looks like. That's the important thing to remember there. Let's see, you view Hill over Woods, even with Taysom's situation being weird, and he's probably not the starter after this year, assuming it if he makes it the entire season. Yeah, I do. And yeah, I mean, I don't know that he's going to make it the entire season. He shouldn't. Like I said at the top, to me, that Jameis Winston is the guy that you want. I think that, now they kind of have an opportunity to go to Taysom Hill and say, he gives us the ability to cover up that deficiency at wide receiver. But, Michael Thomas is going to be back at some point, and, they're going to figure something out at wide receiver. Devontae Adams is available. So, there's ways to make some moves here to bolster that thing. I think Jameis Winston is the better option, but we know that Taysom Hill is going to be a starter. That gives him Superflex starter value. That's number one. That's the first piece. We've got to, it's to some degree, we've got to really kind of stick to these super flex values, and just say, a starting NFL quarterback has a certain amount of value, just kind of in general, to the entire economy, to the entire market of your league. That's number one. Number two, though, is the wide receiver position. Robert Woods, one of my favorite values in startups, but the wide receiver position is just so deep, I mean, for instance, we know that Will Fuller is going to miss a little bit of time serving that suspension to start off the season. Once he's back on the field, how much do we see Robert Woods outscoring Will Fuller on a weekly basis? I think that at the end of the season, the points per game is going to be in Robert Woods' favor, but by how much? And if it's not a significant amount, if it's not more than 5 points per game, what that kind of tells us is Will Fuller was just as startable most weeks as Robert Woods. In order for them to create that average, to be on either side of that norm, they're both going to do it. They're both going to be on either side of the norm. There's going to be weeks where Will Fuller outscores Robert Woods and vice versa. So, I better check this news real quick because this is not something that I want to hear. Aaron Rodgers will be retiring next week. That's what we're hearing. That's on Pro Football Talk. Ouch, man! Right in the middle of my live show. Are you kidding me? I had to go. if Rodgers retires, I want Taysom back. Yeah, so you did do that. You did that, Addison. You traded him just because he was excess depth, man. And I went to bat for you and said, "There's no way he's doing that. He wouldn't do something like that." That's what you did. The quarterback's value stays the same regardless of what your roster makeup looks like. Son of a yeah, so all right, so here's the thing. I've been all alone on Aaron Rodgers Island for years now. Finally get the MVP season and finally get to take my little victory lap. And then again, Broncos fan, got to talk Broncos with Cal and Nate and Linda last night. And going when we went live for the SuperFlex Super Show during the live draft, during the NFL draft, first the news came out that the Broncos were about to trade for Aaron Rodgers. How was I supposed to do a show? How was I supposed to do a live freaking show with the news that Aaron Rodgers at any minute was going to get traded here to my favorite team here in the city that I live in? How was I supposed to do that? I pulled it off. And now here we are, live show, and I find out he's going to retire. What the hell did I do to anyone to deserve this? This is all right. Let's get back to let's get back to the Saints. I don't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to talk about it. That's all I got to say about that. May have missed it, but with MT injury news, where does this take the Troutman hype? Too high. Too high. Local liability. Yeah. I think that's where you were going with it, and I'm right there with you. I still think that Adam Troutman is absolutely, in that breakout candidate umbrella with guys like Irv Smith, guys like Cole Kmet. There's a handful of those Mike Gesicki, I think, is finally due for that breakout. There's a handful of those younger guys, and Adam Troutman's right there. But yeah, I mean, the idea that he's going to take on an elite level workload just because Michael Thomas is out, this offense is not going to run through a tight end. This offense is going to run through Taysom Hill and however he chooses to distribute the ball. That wasn't my motivation. It was a sell on Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas, and kind of Ish Fuller. Maybe I did view it as a bit expendable. Okay. We kind of got the truth kind of came out there at the end. I get it with Taysom Hill. I don't think that now is the time to sell. That's kind of the bottom line for me. To me, Taysom Hill, wait until they give him that starting job. That's the time to sell. But again, sell him on the fact that he's an NFL starting quarterback, because we know how valuable that is in Superflex. So, keeping in mind that he's not going to hold that job for long. I fully agree with Addison on that one. But that's what I would say is you can still sell him on the fact that he's a starting quarterback, because here's the thing: quarterback extreme, quarterbacks early, quarterbacks often. I end up with 5 of them. I mean, if I've got 5 of them, the rest of the league, somebody doesn't have enough quarterbacks. Somebody's got maybe 2. Somebody might even have 1. That person, and what they shifted their strategy to in the draft when they saw me taking my 5+ quarterbacks, they made the decision right there that, okay, well, I'm just going to stream. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to come and go from the starting lineup, and I'm just going to play the waivers. You got to make them pay. If they want to spend all their fab on quarterbacks, and if they want to, be making trades for these short-term quarterbacks like Taysom Hill, let's make sure that they're still paying full price, because again, that's still going to affect future trades for quarterbacks, because you're setting a price point, right? So you're kind of dictating right then and there what a starting NFL quarterback is going to be worth going forward. There's going to be a little bit of variance to it, obviously, based on, upside, long-term, projections, things like that. But at the end of the day, they're going to say you traded Taysom Hill for X. So, whatever quarterback, you're going to trade next. Like that's the framework that we're working off of, is what you traded Taysom Hill away for. So, man, Addison wishes he was on here right now to freaking argue with me. I guarantee it. Like that's my brother right there. He would absolutely have this conversation with me. I also got a question right before we went live from the poll maker, fantasy pollster. Let's see, what was it? It was my first 9 picks in a 12-team startup draft were all quarterbacks. Do I take the first position player, like say Christian McCaffrey, or do I take a quarterback also? Thanks, I'll hang up and listen. Man, people are not going to like this answer. I mean, here's the thing. It depends on what you want, what kind of roster build you want to come out of this thing with. If you only want 3 quarterbacks, and the reality is people win championships in Dynasty Superflex all the time with, one quarterback, one, starting every week, another one at Superflex, and then a third one on the bench for bye weeks and injuries. Happens all the time. If that's the type of roster build you want to go with, then there's absolutely no reason to have to reach for a quarterback in the first round. Honestly, no one should be doing it. 101 should do it because Pat Mahomes is a difference maker. Nobody else should be doing it. If you're only going to draft 3 quarterbacks in your dynasty startup, don't start in the first round unless you have 101 and get Pat Mahomes. The rest of those guys just don't create enough of an advantage. Like that's the thing that people miss a lot when I talk about quarterback extreme is, the idea that I'm trying to load up on those elite guys because they're difference makers. I don't care. I don't care about, I don't care about their weekly averages. I don't care about that stuff, because the whole point of quarterback extreme, talked about this last week too, the whole point is to stream quarterbacks within your roster. And you're not going to be able to make that move. You're not going to be able to bench Kyler Murray or Josh Allen if you're still stuck on the fact that, oh, he was my first round pick. I drafted him to be an every week starter. You're going to miss out on some monster games from some of those other quarterbacks if you do that. You have to get comfortable with the idea of benching those stud guys. That's the part where I say people don't like that part. People feel very uncomfortable with that idea. and I get it. If it's too much for you, don't do it. But, at some point we have to, we do it at the other positions. We try and make decisions, start your studs is nothing. Set it and forget it is nothing. That's not playing the game. We want to be playing the game every single week. We want to be pushing the buttons and pulling the levers every single week. So, we want to get comfortable with the idea that nobody is an every week starter other than Pat Mahomes. and I did an episode of the SuperFlex Super Show to a lot of criticism, but it was probably the most research I've ever done on quarterback scoring. What I found is, the average score for a quarterback in 2020 was about 18 points per game. And, Pat Mahomes was the only guy who was at or above the weekly average in all but one game. There was one game where he failed to do it. It was against my Denver Broncos. and they beat us, I want to say 43-10, something like that. The Chiefs did. And Pat Mahomes was outside. He was a below average quarterback for that 1 week because, they returned a kick for a touchdown. Byron Pringle returned a kick. Clyde Edwards-Helaire broke a long touchdown run, and then they intercepted Drew Lock and returned that for a touchdown. So all the touchdowns that would have went to Pat Mahomes, even if these guys got tackled, 1 or 2 yards short of the end zone, and that would have gone to Pat Mahomes and made his week, all of those went to, these freak long plays that very rarely happen. And if he got one of those touchdowns, he was going to have his 15 out of 15 weeks where he was an above average quarterback for the week. So he's the only guy. He's the only guy that you set it and forget it with. Nobody else deserves that type of alpha status. We've got to get comfortable with that idea. So, but if that is the type of game that you want to play, if you want to go with 3 quarterbacks and, you want to set it and forget it, I mean, you probably do have to take a quarterback in the first round. I still wouldn't advise it. Not if 9 win ahead of you. That is a great time to to grab Christian McCaffrey or your favorite running back. You're only a couple picks away. You can get your first quarterback there. Still going to be a good one. And they're going to score roughly the same every single week. So there is an overall, there's an advantage in creating that scoring baseline if you're willing to play matchups. But if you're not, just get your 3 quarterbacks, start in the second round, start in the third round, even that works. So, I mean, a group of Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield and, Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz. There you go. There's a group of 3 quarterbacks who you're going to be just fine with that group of guys. Tommy Gunn, which running back has more dynasty value, Darrell Henderson or Cam Akers? I mean, it's got to be Darrell Henderson, right? I think that people are still kind of holding on to some hope that they're going to be able to sell Cam Akers for first round value. The word is out that, we kind of talked about at the top, those Achilles injuries. There's not a very good track record of running backs coming back from that. So, I think that the ability to sell Cam Akers for anywhere close to, first round rookie pick value is probably slipping away as more people find out that, this isn't an ACL. We've seen running backs come back just fine from an ACL, in a year's time or less. And this Achilles thing, though, it's been a long time since we've seen. I don't think that we have seen at this point. Jeff Mueller, physical therapist here at dynastyleaguefootball.com, just put out an article about Cam Akers. And the prognosis is not good for, return to play at the same level that he was at. So what I would say, though, is I don't know that Darrell Henderson is going to be much of a long-term value either. I think that you would probably get Cam Akers plus for Darrell Henderson right at the moment. And I guess that's kind of what we're talking about, right? For dynasty value. I mean, there's the dynasty outlook, which is that, Cam Akers not likely to make it back to, to full power and back to form. And, Darrell Henderson is not kind of the long-term option, or else they wouldn't have drafted Cam Akers in 2020, so I don't think either of those guys has a great dynasty outlook. is in terms of value, and we're just kind of going off of, right this moment. I think that Darrell Henderson probably has more value. I think you're getting Cam Akers plus for him right at the moment, just because you get Henderson, at least in theory for the season. Corey Dean been trading around in a startup and currently have the 101, 108, and 212 in a startup. Wow, nice. Starting lineup is only 8 and it's super flex. Any advice? I mean, 101 pretty much has to be Pat Mahomes. Like I was just saying, he's not only the most bankable quarterback, he's the one player in all of fantasy football, in a super flex league in particular, but really kind of regardless of the format. He's the one guy that you put in your lineup as long as he's healthy and not on bye week. He's the one guy that you put in your lineup and you don't even question it. Everybody else is susceptible to bad matchups. They're susceptible to things like the weather, things like some of their weapons being hurt when you're talking about quarterbacks. So he's the only guy who overcomes all of that stuff. And so to me, he's the one guy that you set it and forget it. So, having the 101 is such a massive advantage in super flex leagues, because that's one position that you never have to think about. 1 out of 8 that you never have to think about. I know that, there are going to be guys who are going to be must starts, week 1 of the season. We know that, you're not benching Christian McCaffrey. You're not benching, Alvin Kamara. You're not benching Saquon Barkley. But there are things that can affect those guys to where you're going to, and, plus you could have some guys on your bench that hit, some later round guys who hit. Damian Harris could be a great example of a guy that, he takes over enough of a role in New England. You're going to be feeling like, all right, so who do I start this week? Alvin Kamara or Damian Harris? Like, that's going to be a dilemma. That type of thing is going to be a dilemma that people are going to have this year. So, but there's nobody that Pat Mahomes comes out of your lineup for. So I definitely start with Pat Mahomes at 101, 108 and 212. So I kind of, it depends a little bit on what it took to get there. I think that's a big part of this. And I'm going to see, six touchdowns, go Mahomes and running back or double dip on quarterbacks. Yeah. I think that it kind of depends on what it took you to get there. How depleted is the middle rounds of your draft looking at this point after trading back up into the first round for a second pick. Obviously you didn't give up your second rounder to do it. So, you must be, I'm guessing that it took a haul, of your, either your, third, fourth, fifth round picks, or maybe some of those rookie picks, to get back into the first. Either way, I think that I'm guessing the fact that you still have 101 and you still have 212, I think that you probably got a hell of a deal for 108. But yeah, it kind of depends on what you've got left. My personal opinion is, my personal strategy, quarterback extreme, calls for, 3 quarterbacks in the first 4 rounds. So, if you've got 101, 108, and 212, and then nothing for, several rounds, I think that you probably want to consider quarterbacks at 108 and 212. I would rather not do it if at all possible. Kind of depends again on what picks you still have. To me, the ideal start with my first 3 picks. This is generally what I end up doing. When I've got an early pick in the first round, it's usually one of those top guys, one of those elite guys. So 101, Pat Mahomes, no brainer for me. 108 might actually be a running back. I would love to go running back there. It's just a 212 is a long wait for your next quarterback. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's an acceptable start, to be honest. And especially if you're going to go quarterback extreme, I still think that's an acceptable start. I'm assuming that you're not. I'm assuming that you're not looking for 5 quarterbacks in this draft. You're probably looking for more like 3. So I would say Mahomes, running back, and then you're probably going to want a quarterback at 212, just to make sure you secure 2 of them early on. So, and then you can turn your attention to those other positions. I got a redraft SuperFlex coming up. I've seen Dynasty SuperFlex content. What's the difference? Just drafting quarterbacks later. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it does get pushed down a little bit when in redraft from Dynasty. And I'm not totally sure how much. I haven't seen ADP on redraft, and I don't know how clean it would be even if I did, to be totally honest with you. So, I think without seeing that ADP, just kind of intuitively, I would say that people are going to focus on quarterbacks a lot less early on. I think Pat Mahomes is still going to be 101. I think you're probably still going to see another quarterback or 2 go in the first round. Right now, what I can tell you, though, in SuperFlex ADP for Dynasty is that we had 8 quarterbacks go in the first round. That's average over 4 drafts, over 4 mock drafts. And then if you count 201, which I do, I mean, the guy, whoever drafted at 112 and 201, if they had just switched the order of their picks, we would have had 9 quarterbacks go in the first round. So, I don't think it's going to look like that in redraft. I think that you're going to have, more like 3 or 4 quarterbacks go in the first round. So, and it kind of depends on settings a little bit. But one thing that we kind of talked about last week is the fact that, kind of regardless of the settings, regardless of the format, SuperFlex, whether it's Dynasty or redraft, late round quarterback means something totally different than it does in 1 QB. You definitely don't want to wait beyond like the 4th round to start picking up your quarterbacks. And that's just with a normal roster build. That's just, I feel like I always have to preface that because my personal strategy is that 5 quarterbacks and stream them within my roster. And I do that in redraft too. But, so kind of a more conventional roster build, 3 quarterbacks, you probably want to get your first one by the 4th round, I would say. Let's see. This is why you maximize flip when these unproven running backs have such an inflated ADP value in the offseason. Talking about Darrell Henderson. Yeah, agreed. All right, Addison, I'll try to make you feel better on Rodgers. If he retires for all of 2021, he will lose $15 million salary, his $7 million roster bonus, and the Green Bay Packers could make him repay $11.5 million in unplayed signing bonus. Rodgers' agent is the same one who pulled the retirement tactic with Carson Palmer in 2011 and forced a trade to Oakland. I'm not worried too much right now. Yeah. I hope you're right. First of all, didn't Carson Palmer actually retire? I don't remember how that went. Someone might have to clear that up for me. Aaron Rodgers also just Aaron Rodgers has a different personality, Aaron Rodgers is he's prickly, and I think that he would happily turn over all that money just to prove a point. That's my thought. But I hope you're right. The world is a better place when Aaron Rodgers is playing quarterback in the NFL and playing it well. Oh, you still have 8 picks in 8 rounds. Yeah, you'll have to let me know how how you ended up back at 108 without without giving up a whole lot on in trades to get there, Corey. Um, yeah, I mean maybe some move backs in some places, but sounds like you're still going to be in pretty good shape. You could really kind of build that roster however you were going to. I think that the value at 108 is still at quarterback. But again, I think that the type of the the type of start that I would personally love to see would be, especially if you're going to go with just 3 quarterbacks, start off with Mahomes and then get a running back. But I mean, you can also let it come to you a little bit. I mean, if the rest of your league goes heavy on running backs and they let somebody like Kyler Murray fall to you, Dak Prescott fall to you, I mean, especially if you're not one to try and stream quarterbacks within your roster, man, Pat Mahomes and Dak Prescott, that's just kind of anchoring that lineup for you. That's going to be an awfully good roster for you, awfully good lineup going forward. Kevin Bacon loved you in the River Wild. Is that what that one was called? Yeah, I think so. Anyone selling Jordan Love? Man, not yeah. I haven't seen any just yet. I've got a little bit of Jordan Love, mostly as a handcuff for Aaron Rodgers, and I hadn't really thought about it yet. I think it's probably a little too soon. I think that we need some some concrete news on Rodgers first. Mike Ortiz, I just traded Chubb and Hunt for Henderson and Ruggs. I already have Eckler and Cook. I'm in a 10-team Superflex league. Felt like Chubb is very injury prone, and I love Ruggs. What do you think? I mean, if you're into Henry Ruggs, I think it's probably fine. I'm not, so I think I might have to abstain on that one. I'm a pretty big fan of both Chubb and Hunt, and I actually think that Kareem Hunt could be a trade candidate at some point here. He could end up, man, if he ends up with the LA Rams starting ahead of Darrell Henderson, man, you're gonna hate that trade. But yeah, I hope I for your sake, I hope it doesn't happen. How about that? Oh, and Mike is selling Jordan Love in a flea flicker league. There you go. 2022 first and a 2023 second to trade up to 301. Nice. Feel he's worth a 2022 first. Let's see. Corey, thanks for the tip, man. Appreciate that. I bought Akers in a 23 second for Daniel Jones in a 12-team Superflex. Man, it's probably not a bad price, but again, those Achilles injuries, man, something worth something to consider. And like I said, Jeff Mueller wrote that awesome article over Dynasty League Football. I would recommend checking that out too before anyone else starts buying Cam Akers. If Rodgers retires, what's the value of Green Bay backfield? I mean, I think that offense probably runs through the running game. I think that all of those running backs, all of a sudden, they're going to be busy, especially, I mean, now we're talking about possibly losing Devontae Adams as well. He doesn't want to play on the team with if Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there. Man, I think, yeah, Blake Bortles could end up being the starter. Either way, I think that you're going to see a lot of turning and handing off, a lot of checkdowns too. Damn, you just scared the shit out of me with that Hunt trade proposal. hypothetical situation. Yeah. Like I said, I shouldn't have manifested that one on you. I apologize. I hope for the best. I actually don't think they're going to end up trading for anyone. They don't need to, you know. There's going to be some guys who get cut. And I actually tweeted this the other day, but there's a handful of teams that are going to have to make some cuts at running back. Back to my Denver Broncos. I think Melvin Gordon is a cut candidate. I'm not so sure that he makes this roster because, you know, you've got Javonte Williams, who's a better back already there. You've got Mike Boone, who's a better backup, and both of them play special teams. That might be the killer right there. That's not really a Melvin Gordon part of his profile. So, and there's a handful of teams that still have to make some cuts. Pittsburgh, Houston, Miami, possibly New England. I think they're a little strong. There's a few others that are going to have to make some cuts at the running back position. So, I mean, to me, if you're the Rams, you just hang on and you know, pick somebody up who gets cut during or after the preseason. Yeah, there's a pretty big lag. Let's see. Do you do auction drafts? I love auctions. I prefer auctions. They're harder to gain the advantages that I like to gain. But what I love about auctions is the fact that you can build your roster exactly the way you want to the way you want to build it. So I try to do mostly auctions. I know that most people prefer drafts, and so I talk drafts a lot. But yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking and strategizing on auctions. So yeah, Gator fan 15. Tebow. that's a Tebow number. Tebow alert. Denver Broncos fan here. So Tebow is that was a little bit of a dark spot in our history. Even though we won a playoff game, it's still just, man, I don't know. But yeah, definitely ask me about auctions. I love talking auctions. I prefer doing auctions for my startups. Thoughts on Jalen Hurts in SuperFlex Dynasty? Man, it's like, it sounds like Deshaun Watson is headed there, right? And that sucks because from a talent standpoint, I've always liked Jalen Hurts. I thought he came into the league as, you know, a guy who should have every opportunity to succeed if given the opportunity. He's got the skill set, great runner, very underrated as a passer. He's a much better passer than people think, and a stronger arm than people think because of his size. But that he's got a cannon too. So, man, I was hoping to see Jalen Hurts get a real shot, and it just doesn't seem like they want to give him that opportunity. Really frustrating. It sounds like Deshaun Watson is probably on his way to Philadelphia. That's kind of been the reports, but I'm holding out hope. I've been buying Jalen Hurts all off season with the intention of getting him into my rotation at quarterback in SuperFlex. Anytime we get those quarterbacks with the rushing upside, I don't like them long term because I don't think it's as sustainable, but he also has the type of skill set that I do think settles into, you know, kind of a pocket passer. And so, yeah, but you know, for the time being, we would get that rushing upside. Sign me up for sure. That's kind of what it takes to be a league winner at the quarterback position. Jalen Hurts has it, and, you know, a handful of other guys, but, you know, most of them don't. So, yeah, that easy top 5 upside if we can just get him that starting job. All right, Gator fan 15, let's talk auctions. My home league switched to a 2 quarterback setup. It's an auction redraft, and the rest of the setup is 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, defense and a kicker, and 5 bench. Any suggestions for draft strategy and or roster construction? Okay, so let's see. Let me get the rest of rest of the context here. I've already talked to my commissioner about adding bench spots, but they won't budge thus far. Which is probably fine. The nice thing with 5 benches or with 5 bench spots is there's going to be some quarterbacks available on waivers at all times. You're going to have pretty fruitful waivers, essentially. So, I think that you can go with a pretty balanced approach here. I would probably budget about, man, I can get really specific. I hope that's okay. You can adjust this however you want. What I typically do is budget about 75% of my auction budget towards the core of my team, which to me in a 2 quarterback league is, 2 quarterbacks for sure, and probably a running back and a wide receiver. 75% of your budget for those 4 positions. Or maybe even you might even be able to sneak in another running back in there at 75%. Basically, you can probably plan on Pat Mahomes. He's probably going to go for the most, probably in the neighborhood of 30%. And then, just kind of work down from there. I love building tiers. I think that that's an important piece of auctioning, because, if we target a certain, a particular player instead of a tier of players, that's where we end up overpaying. So, if I say I'm coming out of this with Kyler Murray, that has to happen. He's my quarterback 2 for Dynasty. I don't do redraft rankings, but, so I'm just going to use my Dynasty rankings as an example here, but Kyler Murray is my quarterback 2. If I say I don't want to pay up for Pat Mahomes, but I want to come out of this with Kyler Murray, I mean, I'm going to end up in a bidding war. It's going to end up costing me more than I wanted. But if I make a tier that includes Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, there's 5 guys. And then for me, Aaron Rodgers, if he doesn't retire, he would still be in that top tier as well. And I just say, what, I'm gonna chase each one of those guys and basically get the best value. Whoever ends up being the best value, I'm gonna end up with that guy. I end up with one of my second tier quarterbacks, and you're going to end up saving a little bit of that 75% that you're going to be able to shift to either an upgrade at running back or a second running back to fill out your core of your roster. So yeah, like I said, I mean, it gets very specific with the numbers, and we almost exclusively talk in percentages when it comes to auction. There's kind of not really a great way to do it otherwise. It's difficult anyways, just because each league ends up being different. And this one, I could be off on these percentages. Pat Mahomes might go for more like 50% just because, it's a smaller lineup. It's a small bench. There's enough money out there that can be thrown around, and, not enough spots that need to be filled. So, you're going to have not as many players won at auction, and, it can end up inflating prices quite a bit. But, normally in a normal size, league, 12-team league, usually the top player goes for about 25%. Trying to bump that up a little bit for Pat Mahomes, and then we can just kind of work down from there. So, I would say, I even put together a spreadsheet a lot of times. I nerd out big time on this stuff, guys. That's just, like I said, this is how I like to spend my free time. So, I nerd out quite a bit, but I put together a spreadsheet and I figure out, what 75% of my budget, break it down between each position, and then, kind of look at what tiers do I think I'm going to be choosing from. You can put ADP up against you say 30% for Pat Mahomes, and then just kind of work your way down the ADP and say, all right, so probably 28% for Kyler Murray, and 25% for Lamar Jackson, and you just kind of work your way down the ADP like that. I think you're going to be able to get it to line up and see which tiers you're going to be chasing at each position, and be able to say, with 75% of my budget, I should be able to get a quarterback from this tier, a running back from this tier, and a wide receiver from this tier, and another quarterback from this tier. So that's kind of the best I can do without getting super specific. I also think that's probably about the best anybody can can really give you on that. It's very involved for sure. But yeah, man, we might have to talk some more about that in DMs or something off air. Because those I love the auction formats, and I love doing my drafts that way, doing my startups that way. But yeah, sometimes it feels like I'm getting in the weeds trying to talk about it a little bit. Let's see. One of my thoughts would be to get like 2 top 10 running backs and get values at quarterback, maybe get a mix of Brady, Stafford, Tannehill, Lawrence, Ryan, etc. Could that work, or do you think I'd get burned that way? No, I think that would work. Or do you think I have to get 5 or 6 or top 5 or 6 quarterbacks? No, I don't think you have to. That's still the thing about it is, the quarterback position there isn't. They all still score similarly. Why couldn't I say that word? What the hell just happened there? Is that a stroke? Similarly, on a per game basis. Like when you look back at it at the end of the season, you say, Baker Mayfield scored 15 points per game, roughly. Deshaun Watson scored 21 points per game. It's only a 6-point difference, right? You can make up that difference at the running back position. If you have two elite running backs, you're going to make up that difference. Now, the problem is it didn't actually play out that way. Baker Mayfield was very rarely within 6 points of Deshaun Watson. But, if you want to take the long view and just say, the quarterback position is it's between the two, you're going to get, roughly 30 to 40 points every single week, almost regardless of which two you have. You're going to have some down weeks, but for the most part, you're going to hit that same number pretty much regardless of which two guys you have. So actually, yeah, I think that it would be worth it to chase value a little bit at quarterback. Look more for the guys in the Tannehill and Stafford range. Yeah, I like that a lot. Probably Trevor Lawrence probably wouldn't be a target for me in redraft, but you never know. It's possible. If you could attain the fighting style of any animal, which would it be? And local liabilities going with the kangaroo. Man, that is a freaking tough one. I mean, all the YouTube videos I've seen, it's usually like and it's usually pretty surprising which animal wins, like there's always a video of like, anaconda versus leopard. And like, you would not expect a leopard to be able to beat an anaconda. But it actually, that happens a lot. Water buffaloes beat alligators all the time. So like, yeah, it's kind of hard to, there isn't really a blueprint for this. It's usually pretty surprising. The one that seems to, and I mean, this could just be spin, this could just be a strong PR department. But honey badgers besides not giving an F, they end up winning their fights a lot. I don't know how they do it exactly. Just kind of fearless, I guess. Just not being afraid of what could happen. And that's something that I could use more in my life, just in general, less fear of failure. And that seems to be the way honey badgers end up winning so many of their fights. So yeah, I guess I have to go with that. That's a great question though. Now I'm gonna go back and watch more YouTube videos and try and see what are some of the fighting styles that tend to be the most successful. SuperFlex tight end premium dynasty startup opened with Josh Allen at 102, CeeDee Lamb at 309, Jamar Chase at 401, Terry McLaurin at 402, Trey Lance at 410, and have acquired 2 more 2022 firsts. Any players you like for my build in the 8th and beyond. So what I love about this, I love this roster build because you're young at the foundational positions. Quarterback and wide receiver have the longest shelf lives, projected career expectancy. There you go. By the way, traded out of my 5th and 6th for 1sts and 8s and 9s. Okay. So yeah, those are the 2 positions with the longest career expectancy. You've got those locked down. So now you don't have to deal with it again. It's a little bit like buying a house. You can either pay cash or you can take out a loan. If you pay cash, you don't have that money to spend on other things, but you never have to worry about, making a payment again. That house is just yours now. Or you can take out a loan, leaves you with some money in the bank to go do other things, buy a car, go on vacation, whatever. But you have to do it again next year. You still have to make that house payment again next year. That's the way I view building a dynasty SuperFlex roster, dynasty in general, but specifically SuperFlex, because, paying cash, that's like, passing on the running backs. We know how powerful running backs can be in any fantasy football format, but we pass on them and pay cash up front for quarterbacks and wide receivers so that we don't have to do it again. Next offseason, regardless of what happens, the people in your league who took running backs, who went heavy on running backs, they're going to have to address the running back position again next year, regardless, next offseason. So will you, but so will they. They took Christian McCaffrey and, Cam Akers. Somebody took Cam Akers probably. Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley. They took multiple of those guys. They're still going to have to figure out running back again next season. But they're also going to have to figure out quarterback and wide receiver. They have to walk and chew gum. You get to just chill with your young quarterbacks and with your young wide receivers and just sit back and know that those positions are taken care of. So, yeah, I love that roster build. It goes great with those extra 2022 firsts. Love what you did there. As far as later round guys, let's see. Certainly some. Let me look at ADP real quick in the 8th round and beyond. Jerry Jeudy looks like an 8th rounder if he's still available. You could start taking some shots with tight ends. Dallas Goedert, Noah Fant. Those are a couple young ones who are going to be available later to you. Irv Smith Jr. We talked about him, and Adam Troutman and Cole Kmet as some tight ends, some young tight ends that you'll be able to look for later on. I wouldn't focus too much more on wide receivers, but yeah, some of those young guys like Jerry Jeudy, like Deebo Samuel, even Laviska Shenault. Those are going to be some guys. I would add another 1 or 2 just to kind of solidify that position at all times, including bye weeks. You've got the guys to cover bye weeks for you as well. And then, I mean, honestly, from there, you can just hammer running backs. I mean, obviously, we probably still want a few more quarterbacks for you. It's gonna get a little gross from here, but I think that you can get another quarterback or two, Jimmy Garoppolo, to bridge the gap to Trey Lance. And then, maybe you do something like Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heinicke, or Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, just to kind of give yourself an entire quarterback position for one team. So you've got that backup for bye weeks, because honestly, if you can hammer running back from here, give me one more quarterback, give me one more young wide receiver, give me a couple young tight ends, and then nothing but running back the rest of the way. I know that it feels like a lot to ask. If you've got the stomach for it, just freaking hammer running backs the rest of the way. I think you can actually compete with this team. Excuse me. I didn't want to cough into the mic. That would have felt really rude. Yeah. I think that this can be a team that competes this year if you finish off that roster build. So, and honestly, the running back names don't matter too much. I mean, I think that you're still going to have access to, Darrell Henderson is still going to be there as a guy who's likely to start. Chris Carson could be there for you. Myles Gaskin could be there for you. Mike Davis could be there for you. Damian Harris, that's one that I love. Damian Harris and Ronald Jones are both 10th round ADPs. And those are both likely starters for their teams, and, with top 10 type upside. So, but yeah, I mean, just give me a bunch of running backs and they're all going to be startable for you at some point in the season. It just kind of gives you more opportunities to find the guy who's going to be startable that week. Right. So, in week 6, when, these guys are hurt, James Conner and whoever else, because James Conner's always hurt. James Conner is hurt. So, Chase Edmonds is in, and maybe Travis Etienne is hurt and James Robinson is the lead back. And, maybe that only lasts for a couple weeks. And then in week 8, now DeAndre Swift is hurt and Jamal Williams is the starter in Detroit. So just get a bunch of those guys, and you're probably going to be able to find some guys who will start for you each week. It's going to be a different running back each week, but you're going to increase the odds that you've got a guy who's startable every single week of the season. And then, it's just kind of a revolving door. I think you're going to be able to compete with that team. No, it depends on the league, especially a home league, but where's a good value sheet for 2 quarterback leagues? So 2quarterback.com, or 2QBs.com. Let me punch that into Google. I never get that right. I know that 2 is spelled out, but my good friend Sal Stefanelli, who he kind of paved the way in the SuperFlex space, but he started, so it's 2QBs, TWOQBS.com. And they've got some rankings over there for 2QBs. 2QB Dynasty top 200 rankings. So yeah, he's got 2QBs going again. He probably has something over at 4for4 as well. I mean, I think that you can use SuperFlex rankings as well, SuperFlex rankings and ADPs. The harder part is finding redraft. I don't agree with anyone who says that 2 quarterback and SuperFlex are the same thing. They're not at all. 2 very different formats, actually, but a lot of people do take that approach, and including probably the members of your league. So I think that you can probably find some SuperFlex ADP or rankings or value sheets, whatever it is, and apply that to 2 quarterbacks. I think that the rest of your league is going to do that as well. So I think that's why it would work, even though I don't agree with that. Like to talk draft tips and strategies. Thanks for your thoughts. Yeah, thank you for your questions. That's like I said, I'm pretty passionate about auctions. I like to talk auctions. So yeah, we'll have to do more of that going forward, and maybe I'll have my my thoughts a little bit more organized for you going forward. Joe, yep, love Fournette, Mostert, Damian Harris in the 10th. Yep, yeah, absolutely, those guys. I said Ronald Jones, but Leonard Fournette's going to be startable as well. Absolutely. Both of those guys are going to have some very startable weeks, especially if one of them's out and the other one is available. And we saw that a couple times last year. There were a handful of times where Rojo wasn't available. Leonard Fournette got the entire load, and it was, the full workload was more than enough to make him, top 12 fantasy running back, and vice versa. Ronald Jones is that much more viable when Leonard Fournette's not available. So yeah, those are all great ones. But yeah, the names almost don't even matter at running back. They all end up on the field. They all end up being startable at some point in the season. I mean, we had, J.D. McKissick and Ty Johnson and man, some of the names are escaping me now. There was Devonta Booker, Wayne Gallman, like some of the guys who ended up being fantasy startable. And not to mention, James Robinson, who ended up being a fantasy stud for pretty much the entire season. All of these guys end up getting on the field at some point. So it almost doesn't matter what the names are. We're just kind of playing the odds that when this guy gets on the field, it's going to be at a time where I need a starter. So yeah, that's why just hammer running backs. Since my lineup setup does not start a tight end, but you can start them in the flex spots, would you just ignore that position or still try to go for one of the top 3 to 5 tight ends? Excuse me. Let's see. So you don't have to start them. So in that case, what I like to do is I stop calling them tight ends and wide receivers. I just bunch them all together, call them pass catchers. And think about, so I'm assuming there's no tight end premium here, which means, we're just kind of looking at, Travis Kelce versus, which versus blank, which pass catchers, would we tier Travis Kelce with? And for me, it's probably the second tier of guys, generally speaking. He gets a high enough target volume that I would put him up against, Calvin Ridley. And just kind of treat that flex spot as it can be any pass catch. Well, okay, actually, let me back up. I need to change my mind here. We really want running backs. Unless there's a tight end premium, we really want running backs at those flex spots. So, yeah, I'm going to change my mind completely. Just totally change my train of thought here. The pass catchers thing, we'll save that for a different episode. And right now, let's just talk about setting a lineup that's going to just be a world beater. It's running backs at the flex spots. So, yeah, I wouldn't even mess with tight ends. Unless there's a tight end premium, I wouldn't mess with tight ends at all. If there's a tight end premium, then I'd start looking at those top 3 guys. But I assume that there's not, and in which case I'm just trying to get running backs at those flex spots at all times. Biggest fantasy hype bust of all time is who? Trent Richardson, maybe. There's been a lot of them. There's been some big ones. I'm I'm kind of going with Trent Richardson just because that one personally affected me. But man, there's a handful of them, aren't there? Yeah, you kind of stumped me on that one. Who else was there? That was a big one. And then, it felt like we were about to get some value back when he got traded to Indianapolis, and then just nothing, I think Vernon Davis probably, and that should maybe even be a cautionary tale for Kyle Pitts. The tight end position has let us down a lot over the years. And it's kind of too bad because, man, I want to love tight ends. That's a position where you can really create an advantage. But, we end up with guys like Brandon Pettigrew and, again, Vernon Davis and, OJ Howard, more recently. So, these guys who are supposed to come into the league and just be the next Gronkowski, the next Tony Gonzalez, the next Antonio Gates. And what we're finding out is it rarely comes from the first round of the NFL draft at the tight end position. It's usually a guy that you don't expect. There were something like 5 tight ends drafted ahead of Travis Kelce. 8 of them ahead of George Kittle, So, yeah, the guys who actually get it done are very rarely the guys who had the hype behind them. But, yeah, Jeremy Hill's a good one. Eddie Lacy's a good one. Yeah, running backs. Again, running backs end up being the most powerful position in most fantasy football formats. And we're always looking for guys. I remember Stephen Ridley. I remember being pretty high on Stephen Ridley. And, he couldn't even – I don't even remember who it was. It wasn't Lawrence Maroney at that point, right? There was another one. But, he couldn't even, he couldn't even carve out much of a role in his own team, much less return the type of value that we were looking for. So, yeah, running backs, we're just constantly looking for ways to create an advantage at running back because we know what that can do. And they really have the hit rate, especially in the first round of any kind of fantasy football draft, is just not great. 2-part question. Who are a couple wide receivers and running backs you are avoiding overall, especially in the middle rounds? And who are some of your quote unquote my guys? Let's see. My guys, again, Damian Harris is my absolute favorite with a 10th round ADP. I have to scroll through a little bit to find some of the guys. I know I've got some later ones. Jamal Williams is one that I've ended up with a lot. Darrington Evans, 16th round ADP. Love Darrington Evans. It just feels like, the time is coming where all this usage is going to start to catch up to Derrick Henry, and there's going to be an opportunity for somebody else. Like it's just the odds are that he's going to end up missing some time. And, we end up with some Darrington Evans weeks. Mike Boone, 21st round ADP for Mike Boone. And to me, he's the second best running back on that roster. First best is a rookie who you're probably not turning everything over to right away. I think Mike Boone is going to be very usable. Chris Evans goes super late. That could be a good one as well, especially as a handcuff to Joe Mixon. So there's a few names at running back. At wide receiver, I kind of look for second-year guys a lot. Brian Edwards is probably my favorite. Laviska Shenault, Denzel Mims. Some of those guys, and I know they're another running back for you, Chuba Hubbard. Loved. Such a great running back and, overall back, complete back, who could start for a lot of teams. He just happens to be behind Christian McCaffrey. But McCaffrey struggles with injuries at any point again this season. And once it starts, you kind of hit a slippery slope. So asking Christian McCaffrey to stay healthy for the entire 2021 season, I think is going to be a lot to ask. So I think we're going to see some Chuba Hubbard, and I think we're going to see some fireworks when it happens. Second year guys at wide receiver. So Michael Pittman, Donovan Peoples-Jones is a deep, deep sleeper for me. I think that they might be looking to transition away from Beckham at some point this season. Darnell Mooney, Jalen Reagor has a 12th round ADP, and I feel like things just kind of didn't line up to call him a bust after the dreadful season, the dreadful quarterback play that he just got in 2020, plus dealing with injuries, plus he's a rookie. It takes some time. Wide receiver is a thinking man's position. It takes some time to learn that position. It takes some time to transition to the pro game. Asking a wide receiver as a rookie to do anything, beyond normal is asking way too much. So that's why I really kind of look at those second year guys anyways. But, particularly the guys that people really want to write off way, way too prematurely. So those are two of my favorites, actually, Reagor and Bryan Edwards. Some guys that I'm really kind of fading, unless I'll go to, slightly earlier middle type rounds. Let's see. DJ Moore a little bit. That's kind of starting in the 6th round. Julio Jones, I'm actually kind of staying away from. I think wide receivers changing teams, it's a little bit like a wide receiver coming into the NFL. Now you're learning a new system completely with a new quarterback. There's a learning curve there. I think it's going to slow Julio Jones down a little bit this season. People don't like to hear that one, but and you know what? It's the same thing with quarterbacks. It's tough for quarterbacks to transition to a new team, new system, new group of wide receivers. And so Matthew Stafford going to the LA Rams, I think that affects Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp a little bit as well. I think that it's going to be a little bit tough for them to get acclimated to the new situation. Kenny Golladay, I kind of feel that way too. Going to a new situation, I think it's going to take a little time for him as well. So I'm not necessarily fading these guys in Dynasty, but for 2021, definitely tempering expectations. And it's just a little bit formulaic, with a lot of this stuff. There aren't very many guys that I'm just kind of like, I don't like him. I don't think he's any good. But Mike Williams is one of those guys for me. Mike Williams, Will Fuller, those guys have just kind of always been, it feels just really hard to trust them for very different reasons. But those are guys that won't end up on any of my rosters. I know you're hyped for 4 to 5 quarterbacks, but how much are you willing to sacrifice the rest of your roster in trades to get to 5 quarterbacks? I feel like it's a startup strategy, but hard to do in existing leagues. Yes, absolutely. And that's part of the reason to do it, honestly, because, the quarterbacks are always the cheapest in the startup. That's kind of our mantra when it comes to quarterback extreme. Quarterbacks are always cheapest in the startup. And that's because, they're all available. In the startup, they're all available. So it's easy to say, well, I could take a quarterback, but there's still all these other quarterbacks who are available. I'm going to take a running back now, and then I'll come back and take a quarterback later. You can't do that after the draft. There aren't any quarterbacks available anymore. They're all on rosters. There's nothing on waivers. The only way to get one is to trade for one. And so the price shoots up, And so, first of all, putting ourselves in a position where we don't have to pay that price for quarterbacks now that it's inflated because of the lack of availability. that's part of the reason to do it. You can also take advantage of that value. But yeah, I mean, if you don't get those quarterbacks in a startup, man, you don't want to have to pay the price. And sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to take your medicine and pay what it costs to get a quarterback just to get your head count back up to where it needs to be. We're not even talking 4 or 5. Sometimes, just to get from 1 to 2 in a SuperFlex league, which is, by the way, a qualifier to be able to compete in a SuperFlex league. To get that second quarterback, sometimes we have to pay up to do it. So yeah, that's the big reason that I draft them the way I do, is because I don't want to be in a position to pay the price to get them later. It's just way too expensive. And if you are in that position, if you end up in that position, we all get there at some point, right? I mean, you draft your quarterbacks, and I mean, hell, last year you took Deshaun Watson with a second pick in your startup, at 102, and you took Aaron Rodgers in the third round, or in the second or third round, whatever. And then you took Drew Brees for some depth later. You're down, you don't have any quarterbacks right now. So it happens. Like, even if you draft young quarterbacks, at some point you're going to be in that position where you have to get your head count back up when those guys get old, or whatever happens, whatever scenario it is. We all end up in that situation. The way to build that back up is go after the cheaper guys, go after rookie picks, take them in a rookie draft, even when it means taking Mac Jones instead of Kyle Pitts. We want Kyle Pitts. That would, that's the fun pick to make this year. But you still got to take Mac Jones, because you know that you've got to start building that quarterback depth back up. And I know it's a heavy price to pay, but it's so much cheaper than actually trying to trade for an established quarterback. So yeah, that's like I said, that's a big part of the strategy for me, is to not be in a position where I have to, pay the price for a quarterback outside of the startup. Because I don't want to do it. You're right. It's way too expensive. So, to trade for them later. So draft them while they're cheap, essentially. I find myself drafting Robert Woods pretty often. Yeah, I mean, I think that he's going to be fine. I don't think that Matthew Stafford is going to be worse than Jared Goff. I just don't know that he's going to be a whole lot better. And a lot of this kind of came from talking with Peter Howard at PA Howdy, host of Dynasty Crossroads and a writer here at DLF. And, just talking about, what does it mean to go from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford? And, we know that Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback. Does that necessarily translate to a whole lot of production on the field, especially in year one? And, the answer is probably not. So, I think that Robert Woods is fine. I just think that if he's being valued as if his numbers, his productivity is going to improve because his quarterback improved, I think that you're going to end up overpaying, essentially. I know you need to be flexible in the draft, but several of my favorite early running backs are Henry, Eckler, and Chubb. Is it plausible to get at least 2 or 3 of them without messing up the rest of the budget? No, I don't think. I do think it's plausible. I don't think that there's anything wrong with targeting those guys. Like I said, I mean, I think that tiers keep you, if you go off of tiers, running back tiers, I think it keeps you from overpaying. But I think you can put those guys in a higher tier, and you can say, I would rather have Derrick Henry than Dalvin Cook, so I'm going to put them in the same tier and plan on paying Dalvin Cook money for Derrick Henry. You're probably going to get him cheap if you do it that way. So as far as being flexible in the draft, flexible in the auction, I mean, I think that those tiers, like I said, keeps you from overpaying. Beyond that, though, I'm a huge, huge proponent of go all in on what you know, go all in on what you think, go all in on your best ideas, go all in on your best strategies. Screw being flexible, you know? I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of let the draft come to you. I'm not a fan of be water. That's not me. I know what works for me. I know what strategy works for me, and I'm not letting anybody push me off of that, because if I compromise on what I know best and I say, okay, well, I really want a quarterback here because I want my 5 quarterbacks and this gives me a chance to get there. But value says, ADP says, rankings say, whatever it is, says that the right pick here is running back. Back to first 9 picks were all quarterbacks. So what are you doing at 110? Are you taking quarterback or are you taking Christian McCaffrey? Are you taking Joe Burrow or are you taking Christian McCaffrey? I'm still taking Joe Burrow because I feel best about my rosters when I have the quarterbacks. I don't need Christian McCaffrey. I know that the conventional thought is Christian McCaffrey is the better player than Joe Burrow. I feel better about my roster. I feel more confident, and I do a better job of managing my roster when I've got the quarterbacks that I want. So, yeah, make a plan, stick with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Did you hear about the 2 Krogers in one building? Uh-oh, dad joke? Do we have a dad joke? We need the punchline. Oh man. Do you have that restaurant from Munda where you live? No, I've never heard of that. I'm in Denver, Colorado. That sounds way too exotic for us. We mostly just eat just plain chunks of meat, basically. we're still we pride ourselves on our Mexican food, but I always hear from under these nuts. Damn it. Like, here I am acting like this is a real legit question. I'm like having a conversation about this. All right. Anyways, Mike Ortiz, get us back on track. What are your thoughts on CeeDee Lamb now that Amari Cooper is on the PUP list? Wide receiver 1. At this point in the season, or in the cycle, in the NFL calendar, I don't put a whole lot of stock into who's on PUP and who's not. I think you're going to see a lot of veterans on PUP to start the season. I mean, that's just kind of a thing they do. That's how they kind of keep them fresh. Let the rookies go out there and, the 7th round picks and the undrafted free agents, let them kill themselves in training camp. Amari Cooper's already proven everything he needs to prove. So, there's no point in making him run wind sprints in 100-degree heat. But I don't know that this is going to amount to much for Amari Cooper in terms of time missed once the season starts. So I think that you approach CeeDee Lamb as if Amari Cooper is going to play the entire season. Because if he doesn't, it's going to be close. It's going to be most of it. So I think that we can still be high on CeeDee Lamb as as a top, 10 wide receiver. I think I have him ranked that way if I remember right. So I wouldn't move him up or down. Let's say that. Because the thing is, having Amari Cooper on the field is still a good thing for CeeDee Lamb. Amari Cooper's still going to draw the top coverage. As good as CeeDee Lamb is, if you're a defensive coordinator, the guy that keeps you up at night is still Amari Cooper, at least for the time being. So, you're going to see Jalen Ramsey line up on Amari Cooper, not CeeDee Lamb. So, good. It's a good thing to have Amari Cooper on the field. But I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be excellent either way. Like I said, top 10 for Dynasty. Say more like top 15 in redraft. Doing a SuperFlex startup soon. How late do you think it's possible to wait for wide receiver? I'm thinking of going all quarterback and running back, maybe a tight end if someone slides for the first 10 rounds. Yeah, that might be a little long to wait, but not bad. That's pretty close to what I've been doing. I've been doing primarily quarterbacks and running backs for the first, 6 or 7 rounds. And then I'll change my attention to wide receiver for a minute. And then I hammer wide receiver real quick. Just grab, if you start 2 of them, if you have 2 starting wide receiver spots in your lineup, grab, 3 wide receivers real quick and then get back to running backs. And then, grab maybe another wide receiver flyer or 2. Some of those sleeper guys that I mentioned, Bryan Edwards and Laviska Shenault, Michael Pittman. Grab another one of those guys a little bit later and call it good at wide receiver. So, yeah, I love that strategy. Wide receiver 10th round is, like I said, it's a little too long to wait for me. Back to ADP, where you're looking at your wide receiver 1 being somebody like Brandon Cooks, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, Will Fuller, Jarvis Landry. So those are guys I would be fine with having them, as a wide receiver 2. I'd feel a little bit, even in round 8, Odell Beckham Jr., Jerry Jeudy, Adam Thielen, I'd be okay with those guys as a wide receiver 1. I don't think that I could go much later than that. But yeah, overall, I love that strategy. What would you be willing to budget for those 3 running backs as an example? Also, how do you balance not blowing your budget up front, but also not being left with too much money? I don't worry about being left with too much money, to be honest. I just want to get my guys. I think that if you've got enough money left over, like if you're getting good value on the guys that you're targeting, first of all, it's going to make your bench a little bit better. And again, you're probably not going to spend all your money, and I think that that's fine. The bigger question is, are you ending up with guys that you feel comfortable with and confident in? So if it's those running backs and you get them all cheap and it leaves you with some money, man, I'm perfectly fine coming out of that with a little extra money. But Henry, Eckler, and Chubb in that format, I think that it's probably going to cost you close to that 75% to get those three guys. It might be more like 65 to 70% for those 3 guys, but I think they're all going to be, fairly high price guys. And honestly, like I would budget it that way as if they are going to be. And again, maybe I get them cheap, so like I said, I would, budget for Derrick Henry. I would put him in a tier with Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara and say, if I get Derrick Henry for less than Dalvin Cook, even though I want Derrick Henry more than I want Dalvin Cook, I think that that's a win regardless of the price that you had to pay. But yeah, I would budget it that way. I would put those guys in the tiers. I would say I would look at the entire running back landscape and say, which running backs do I want Austin Eckler more than? And if it ends up being guys like Joe Mixon and J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift, if it ends up being those guys, or maybe even, Antonio Gibson, Ezekiel Elliott. Like if you want Austin Eckler more than those guys, put them in the same tier, and you can kind of project what those guys are going to go for by looking at ADP or rankings or whatever, and budget that much for Austin Eckler, and then you're probably going to get him a little bit cheaper. You're going to be left with a little bit more money that you can throw at Nick Chubb, for instance, or those kind of those discount quarterbacks that you're looking at. So that's kind of how I would approach that. This may be a silly question, but since my league is 2 quarterback and 12 teams, but only has 5 bench spots, would you still draft a third quarterback, or would you hope that you could get one on waivers? For the roster build that you're going after, I think that you're probably and not only that, but just kind of the makeup of this league. The smaller starting lineups, includes a defense and a kicker, and then the small benches. I think there's going to be quarterbacks on waivers for you. Now, I think that you probably want to stay on top of waivers. You want to try and get there early. You want to try and find the quarterbacks, who like start looking at matchups kind of in like week 1 or 2. If you've got, one of your quarterbacks has a bye in week 8, let's start looking in week 1 or 2. Let's look ahead to the matchups, and see who's going to have a good matchup, but particularly the guys who are available on waivers. Let's look at those guys and start planning ahead for waivers, and make sure and get that guy, your waiver or your bye week replacement guy, get him a week or 2 early. But, I think that you can use waivers as an extension of your roster in this case, just because I think waivers are going to be pretty plentiful. Normally, I would say you probably want 3, if not 4 quarterbacks on rosters to make sure you can cover buys, but that's because they're not going to be available on waivers. Well, in your case and in this league, they're going to be available. So I think, I think that you can get away with just drafting 2. Cooper is coming off an ankle surgery that he had in January. Makes me nervous to draft him anywhere. Yeah, totally get it. What I will say, I mean, there's just kind of a big difference between Cooper getting that ankle surgery in January and Michael Thomas getting that ankle surgery in June. Cooper's had a lot more time to recover than Michael Thomas is going to have. So, but yeah, I get it. I just don't think. First of all, I still don't think it's going to translate to a lot of missed time. I really don't. But I also don't think that it necessarily helps. That's the bottom line to me, is I don't think that it helps CeeDee Lamb for Amari Cooper to be out. I think CeeDee Lamb is, and back to preaching the Peter Howard gospel a little bit here of, vacation targets. And the fact that targets are earned, CeeDee Lamb's going to get the same number of targets regardless of who else is on the field, because CeeDee Lamb is the type of guy that you want to get the ball to. You want the ball in his hands. It raises a percentage of a positive play, a positive outcome, which raises a percentage of, being able to move the ball and ultimately score, which raises the probability of winning a game. So, that's what CeeDee Lamb is, kind of regardless of who's on the field with him. So, I think that it's fair to be worried about Amari Cooper. I just don't think it affects CeeDee Lamb. Would you rather draft handcuff running backs if you already have the star running back, or if someone else has the star? Yeah, this is kind of an ongoing thing. I wouldn't even call it a debate. Like at this point, I don't think very many people represent the other side of this. The whole, do you draft your handcuffs or do you draft someone else's handcuffs? My ultimate answer is I don't think that it matters. I will take any of them, because, like I said, I think that they're all going to end up being startable at some point. I still would rather have my own handcuffs personally. That's a higher priority to me than getting somebody else's handcuff. And the argument is always that, if you've got Dalvin Cook, so you draft Tony Pollard, and then, whoever it is that has Zeke gets hurt, and now you've got this top 12 running back in Tony Pollard. And you can in theory, you can kind of hold them for ransom against the whoever has Zeke. Drive the value up a little bit and get yourself a nice return for him in trade. But even more than that, now all of a sudden you can start Tony Pollard along with Dalvin Cook, and that's fine. But I think that if I've got Dalvin Cook and I lose Dalvin Cook, having Tony Pollard when Zeke is still healthy does me absolutely no, and as much as a-hole right there, like that does me no good. I don't want somebody else's handcuff when my starting running back gets hurt. So to me, my own handcuff is still the priority. If I've got Dalvin Cook, I want Alexander Madison. If I've got Dalvin Cook. I love Alexander Madison, by the way. I thought they had the most ridiculous depth in the NFL when they had him and Mike Boone. It felt like all three of those guys, obviously Cook, one of the best running backs in the league. Madison, good enough to start for most NFL teams. And I felt like Mike Boone could probably have started for about a quarter of the league. I still kind of feel that way. I think Mike Boone is going to have a role for the Broncos. But yeah, Madison is as good as it gets for a backup, for a handcuff running back. He's kind of, if you were to rank the true handcuff running backs, I think Madison is probably number one. So if I've got Dalvin Cook, I want Madison, because if Cook goes down, now I have that hole in my lineup I've got to fill, and I can't do it with Tony Pollard unless Zeke goes down too. So yeah, give me my own handcuff. Do you do IDP at all? I've played it and have kind of developed some strategies around it. It really kind of depends on the scoring a little bit. Bottom line is I don't know defensive players real well. I can kind of compartmentalize the different positions, but if you were to ask me for specific names, I'm not your guy. Tom Kislingberry and Adam Sticky Z on the Read and React podcast from DLF. Those are the guys to talk to about that. They're far more well-versed in IDP than I am. Thoughts on the two duos of Jacobs and Connor and Lockett and Claypool? They all have at least some upside, but also risk. Yeah, the wide receivers I think are fine. Lockett and Claypool, love that combo. Absolutely no problem with that combo. I mean, and I think I mentioned this last week. There's really just kind of there's this bucket of about 40, 50 wide receivers who all do roughly the same thing. Some of them have a little bit higher floor than the others. Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill. Those guys are pretty consistently going to score double-digit points. They all have the exact same ceiling, though. 40 or 50 wide receivers, all with the same ceiling. And I think Lockett and Claypool are well within that. As long as these guys are staying healthy, getting at least six targets a game, they're going to be right there. They're all going to score double-digit points every single week, and they're going to have that top 5 wide receiver upside. So it's so hard to create an advantage at wide receiver, just because of that, because of how crazy deep it is. So really give me any two guys, and I feel like I'm going to be just fine at the wide receiver position. And there's that's the other position. That's the one position where set it and forget it actually kind of works. Because, I haven't really found any kind of correlation with matchups. I think that quarterback matchups can affect them, but the wide receiver matchups don't really change the math all that much. It's still all about volume. If they're getting volume, they're going to be fine. So, if you put DJ Moore up against Jalen Ramsey. As long as he gets targeted enough by Sam Darnold, he's going to be fine. There's no reason to bench him. So as for Josh Jacobs and James Conner, that's a tougher one. That's kind of that feels like a combo that is good to get you started in week 1, and then you kind of move on to the next combo. It running backs, it kind of works in a wave, and it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, where 1 week, this guy is going to be hurt and his backup is going to take the lead role. DeAndre Swift is going to be hurt for a week or 2 or 6, whatever it is, and Jamal Williams is the lead back. At some point, Josh Jacobs is probably going to miss some time, and Kenyon Drake is a startable, fantasy running back for you. And then Josh Jacobs comes back and James Conner gets hurt, and Chase Edmonds is startable for you. So, it's just kind of catching the wave at the right time with these running backs. And James Conner and Josh Jacobs are both first wave type of guys. So I have no problem with them early on, but you definitely want some depth because those guys are ultimately going to miss some time, and you're going to need someone else to start for you. Latavius Murray, Gus Edwards, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams. How would you rank them, and how many of them could you see starting them in the flex? Kareem Hunt is the only guy who's immediately startable. So I'm going to put him number 1. I'll rank him first because, he's an every week starter for you as a flex consideration. And then, ranking those guys, like I guess I'll go Latavius Murray number 2 because, I'm kind of going to go off of offensive lines at that point. Like if these guys are in the lead back role all at the same time, who's in the best situation? And I think that Latavius Murray has the best offensive line behind him. He's got the best offense around him that's conducive to running the football, followed by Gus Edwards and then Jamal Williams. But honestly, those guys are just kind of like back to the tier approach to it. I think those guys are all just kind of, take out Hunt. The other 3 are just in a tier together. My league is full PPR if that affects it. That just solidifies Kareem Hunt, best pass catcher of the group as well. So, and none of those guys are necessarily going to be pass catching specialists in their offense. That's going to make them, elevate them to flex consideration, even if the starter's healthy. West Coast Chiefer, I have an offer out in 12-team SuperFlex PPR. Trevor Lawrence and Brandon Ayuk, or Justin Fields and Jamar Chase. Which side? Thoughts? Thanks. I think so. Generally speaking, I don't really care which wide receiver I have too much. Because again, all wide receiver, all quarterback. Sorry, I don't really care too much which quarterback I have. Usually, I'm going to take the quarterback with the bigger plus, and I think I'm probably still going to do it in this case. I'm going to talk through this and test that theory. But the reason being, the quarterbacks, when you compare them to one another, they're generally going to score roughly the same over the course of the entire season. And we kind of talked about that earlier. The fact that, Baker Mayfield on a per game basis ended up scoring about 6 points less than Deshaun Watson, quarterback to Deshaun Watson. And, we know better as far as what actually happened. We know that Baker Mayfield had some dreadful games early in the season, and Deshaun Watson was pretty frequently spanking him. But, what ended up happening is, in order to get that per game average up, Baker Mayfield had some great games down the stretch, and he ended up being a viable starter. And so you didn't have to have Deshaun Watson because you were fine with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield plus, whatever else you had at, Superflex and at running back, they all kind of combine to make up that very small difference between Baker and Deshaun Watson. So generally speaking, I don't, I don't like to upgrade at quarterback. I'm all about downgrading at quarterback. And again, I'll take the side with a bigger plus. I kind of feel that way at wide receiver too. But ultimately here, I'm going to stick with that. I think that, I don't think that the floor is that much different between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And the upside is with Lawrence, but we kind of don't care too much about overall upside for the entire season. We're just kind of looking for startable weeks. And I think Justin Fields is going to be just as startable going forward as Trevor Lawrence. So yeah, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say I want to side with the bigger plus. The bigger plus to me is Jamar Chase over Brandon Ayuk by a significant margin. So I'll take Justin Fields and Jamar Chase, take the upgrade at wide receiver without, a huge downgrade at quarterback. Also have Trey Lance and Matt Ryan at quarterback, if that helps. Yeah, doesn't really change much, to be honest. Although what I will say is Trey Lance with Brandon Ayuk. I kind of talked a little bit last week, started talking about stacking quarterbacks with their pass catchers. And the theory being because again, for my strategy, I'm streaming quarterbacks within my roster, kind of going off of matchups. Well, if I have a great matchup, if I've got Trey Lance going up against Detroit, who last year was that was the matchup for quarterback. They gave up the most points per game to fantasy quarterbacks. So Trey Lance is going up against Detroit, I'm going to start him because he's got the best matchup. The easy logic, the easy theory would be that Brandon Ayuk is in for a big game as well. If Trey Lance is going to do what I think he's about to do to the Detroit Lions, Brandon Ayuk is going to get a pretty big piece of that. So yeah, that might actually switch things, come to think of it. I like the idea of keeping Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk together more than I like the idea of having Jamar Chase. And then, keeps you with Trevor Lawrence, who probably safer than Justin Fields. I don't think that it's going to be a huge difference in scoring, especially when you look at game logs. But I do think that Trevor Lawrence is the safer long-term asset. My dynasty league has one quarterback, non-tight end premium. I have both Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert at quarterback, and Noah Fant and Kyle Pitts at tight end. Would you trade Fant and or one of the quarterbacks, or keep all four? Nah, I'd keep them. I don't think you have any reason not to. I mean, and it kind of back to talking about the foundational, young players. I think that tight end, especially with a tight end premium, can also be that one of those foundational positions. Tight ends have a longer career expectancy as well. So, yeah, I mean, to have young guys at all four of those foundational positions, although it's one quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, you don't need both of those quarterbacks. If you can get any kind of upgrade at a more premium position in a one quarterback league, I would absolutely move either one of those guys. Probably I'd prefer to trade away Trevor Lawrence and keep Justin Herbert, but I would trade, Herbert's going to get you the bigger return. So if you can get something, strong in return, I would do it. Landing spots for Jimmy G. Man. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be as a backup kind of regardless. I don't know that there's a starting job going to be available for him? I mean, maybe one of these rookie quarterbacks kind of busts out. And I wouldn't even want to speculate on who it's going to be. I think a lot of people feel that way with Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. I love Zach Wilson. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be awesome. So I'm not even considering the possibility that he's going to lose his job at any point. Mac Jones, yeah, I mean, that one would make sense, reunite with the Patriots. Let's call that the best case scenario for Jimmy Garoppolo. Otherwise, I think he's going somewhere as a backup, maybe a bridge to a quarterback, like maybe Washington just completely clears the deck. And, we see Jimmy Garoppolo as the bridge to, Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell, but kind of best case scenario, I think would probably for him would be Mac Jones proves to be a bust and he reunites there. That feels like the only scenario where Jimmy Garoppolo is a starting quarterback and thus, SuperFlex viable anytime soon. I know you mentioned the wide receivers being in a big pool together, but between Lockett, Claypool, Deebo Samuel, do you trust one of those three more than the others in redraft this year? Lockett, yeah. I do trust Lockett a little bit more than those guys. It's a slim margin. That's kind of the point, I guess. They're all still going to score similarly. They're going to give you, they've got the same upside. They're going to have just as many, top 10 weeks. Like, Tyler Lockett probably gives you like 5 top 10, top 12 type weeks. Chase Claypool gives you, 4. Something like that, and Deebo Samuel probably 4 as well. So that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like Lockett is the safer option on the better offense. He's been there longer. He's more established. And they're just, fewer mouths to feed in his particular offense. But the difference is just marginal. That's why I say, wide receiver, like that big bucket, you just reach in and grab one, whoever it is, because, some are going to be better than others, but it's just always going to be super close. There's going to be a marginal difference that you can make up at another position. What are your thoughts on having a quarterback, wide receiver, running back stack on a high-powered offense? I don't like doing it with running backs. I think that running backs kind of cap the upside of the passing game. I would prefer to do it with a quarterback and a wide receiver tight end. That's a stack I like to put together. Because the problem is if you're running the football, you're not throwing the football. So, if your running back scores a touchdown, that's an opportunity missed for your wide receiver. So they kind of, and vice versa, so they kind of cap each other. So I don't really like to do that. Sometimes it works with those, with the super efficient, super high powered offenses. I made it work with Baltimore 2 years ago with Mark Ingram, Mark Andrews, and Lamar Jackson. Done it with the Chiefs before, and particularly late in the season, like Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Damian Williams a couple years ago. Like that was a stack that worked. But generally speaking, though, I would rather get more upside at running back and unlock more upside in the passing game by stacking, a quarterback and a wide receiver and then getting a running back from a totally different team. So, if I've got that Mahomes and Tyreek Hill stack, for instance, it's conceivable. And then instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I've got DeAndre Swift. There's the opportunity there for Tyreek Hill and DeAndre Swift to score a touchdown at the exact same moment. And, my score just kind of shoots up. There's no possible way for that to happen if I'm starting Tyreek Hill and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So So yeah, I don't like to stack the running backs with them, but if you can find those super high powered offenses, if you can, kind of forecast who that's going to be, I think that you can make it work. I still do think that you're capping your upside just a little bit. Thoughts on the Michael Thomas news? Yeah, and we kind of talked about that at the top. Biggest takeaway is I think that it means Taysom Hill is starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, at least until Michael Thomas gets back, and then maybe they reassess. But I just think that it hurts that whole offense for fantasy purposes. Again, I think Taysom Hill is a starting quarterback, but I think that the entire offense is gonna suffer. Do you think there's much difference within the tier of Pitts, Hawkinson, and Andrews? No, I really don't. I think they all have the potential to jump up into the elite tier. I don't think any one of them is more likely than the other. So, yeah. All right, we have gone way, way too long. A lot of fun. I'm freaking worn out. I need to drink some water. So we're gonna wrap this one up for the week. But I really appreciate all the questions. It was a lot of fun as always. We'll do it again next week for sure. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for some great discussion. And until next week, stay sexy and super flexy.